No problem.
Well, Josh Charles, what in the world did you feel like you had to do to get the Emmy voters' attention this year?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. That's a funny question.
A little bit drastic, I think.
Well, yeah. No, I did some great on the show for a network show in its 5th season to sort of dig in the way we did. I think we were all really it really made everybody really proud of the work we were doing on the show, and I'm glad that it resonated with viewers this year so much. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, Chris. That's a tough one to start off with, man. Come on.
But listen, mate, like, I thought we were friends. Like, we spoke, we chatted last November, and nothing, you didn't say a thing about the fact that Will was going to get killed, and bang, it happened, and we were all in shock. How the hell did you pull this off? Like, nobody had an idea. It was amazing.
How do we keep it quiet? That's a good question. Yeah. Especially considering that the decision was made in season 4, so we kept it quiet for, I would say, over a year. It was not easy. I was for sure. Also, I think what made it even harder was the fact that we were preempted a lot in season 5 for sporting events and the Olympics. So our normal sort of 4-episode lead time grew, and we were off the air for like a month here and a month there, the holidays, and so I just thought over that period of time that word would get out or someone would spill the beans, but no one did. I think it's a testament. It's a group effort. I mean, it's the cast who knew early on, the producers certainly. I'd say the studio and the network. Everyone just sort of collectively knew that we had this opportunity, because I think the press had sort of announced that I had signed on for a whole season, which was not correct information. So I think we were able to use that to our advantage, and I think that's part of why we were able to pull it off. I think people who follow the show, who maybe had some sense, thought, oh yeah, well, this might happen at the end of this year, but I don't think anyone saw where it was going to happen. And I think because people thought that I had been signed on through the whole year, I think that really allowed us to do that. And I'm really glad we did, because it gave the writers a long time. It gave Will a proper goodbye. A time to say goodbye. I got to direct a couple more episodes last year. I'm going to do one more this year. So I feel like I'm still a part of that family, but it was really glad that it all worked out the way it did, because it's been such an important part of my life, this show, and my career, and it was such a great way to obviously very dramatic and shocking, but a great way to say goodbye. I think this season we really dug into the character a lot more than I had maybe had the opportunity to in the past, and that meant a lot to me acting-wise, and it was a great sort of final year on the show, acting.
Well, the other thing about that dramatics episode was, as a viewer, it just felt like a normal trial kind of episode. I mean, there was no hint at all as it was moving along, that anything was going to, explosive of any kind was going to happen toward the end.
Yeah, I think that was their intent. It just felt a little, and Will battling. But I think what was cool was that we had introduced Hunter Parrish's character earlier in the season. In episode 7, I think it was, and I felt that was really important. What happened? I lost you guys.
You're okay.
No, we're all good.
I just looked at the screen and I saw like a gold derby thing. Sort of.
We're just testing you. It's all right.
so I think that helped.
The big gold derby logo. Was that what you're saying?
Exactly. It was just flashing. I was like, all right, I don't know where Rob and Chris went, but I think that helped also, because it had set this character. People kind of knew about him. Was he ever going to come back? And then he came back, and you could see how invested Will got, in proving his innocence. And so it just added this tragic, component to it. I don't know, it's cool.
And so take us back to the night of. What happened after that episode aired? Because I saw a lot of the stuff on Twitter and Facebook and whatever. But first of all, just your immediate friends and family and colleagues, what was the reaction? What was some of your favorite reactions that you received that day and and the following day?
Well, it was interesting actually because the episode aired, and I I was filming an independent film with Sarah Silverman and editing an episode that I had directed. So it was really, I had to do it over the weekends in the production office here in New York, sort of like this with the editor, via Skype, a kind of Polycom system. And so I was there in the editing room editing this episode, and just sort of glanced at Twitter and just saw that sort of, little by little start to I don't know, my phone started to catch fire and just sort of bust. But the best part, the funniest part about that, there's a funny story, which is, we worked as we were just talking about, we worked so hard as a group to keep this secret for the dramatic, storytelling of the year, and that the surprise element of it was one that was important to the narrative, and that was important for all of us. And had we lost that, I think we would have lost something that was a part of it, and we knew what we were doing. Not just shock for shock's sake, but that it was part of just the randomness of it and how quickly these things can happen. And so while we worked all this time, and I get a text from from one of the CBS producers who said, "Don't look at Twitter. It aired earlier in Nova Scotia." and people are tweeting about it, and then so we went through this 10-minute period of thinking that Nova Scotia was going to blow the whole surprise, but I guess it never really caught people in the other, in the East Coast and West Coast and in the Middle America. No one ever caught wind of it. So it's sort of, the people in the East Coast, I should say, really, because they were the ones driving it. We were a little delayed, I think, that night airing. I think that's what it was, and it wasn't delayed in Nova Scotia, so there was this little bit of a lag time, and somehow, miraculously, I guess the people that were tweeting about it in Nova Scotia, nobody, it didn't blow up on us, which was good, because that was a little dicey for a minute, but.
Jeez, bloody Nova Scotia almost ruined the whole thing.
Producers. A long time before that you were going to leave, what were you on board with them killing you off, or did you feel like, I'd like to have the character still alive in case I want to come back one day? What were your thoughts when they gave you this plot line?
I think I knew, pretty about it, and I think it was probably during the finale of season 4. He was directing it, and we were just talking in between takes about what he was thinking about. And he said, "I think we're gonna take the more shocking, dramatic option and kill him off. Are you cool with that?" And I was. It's a ballsier, sort of more daring choice. I know it's happening a lot in television, but I think for our show, which we don't really do that type of stuff, and I think for and just what were the other options? The other options are, they've discussed this in the press, but, Will goes to Seattle, Will goes to New York, Will goes to LA. I don't know what they are, but it just didn't feel as soon as he said it, it just felt a lot more like it made sense, and it added to more importantly, it added to the tragic component of Alicia and Will's dynamic. And given that the show really is about Alicia, ultimately, I think that was exciting for them dramatically, and also for me as someone who's a part of the show and care about the show and the life of the show. I never doubted for a second. I did the show. I kind of always know the show will be fine without me, and part of doing this 5th season the way we did, I think, just sort of helped give them time to prepare it, give the character, like I said earlier, a proper goodbye, and also really show in an interesting place into where it takes Alicia next in her journey and her evolution. And I was excited by the idea.
And the beauty of what they did to your character is, well, first of all, the show really hit its stride in season 5, and a lot of people, critics and the media, were so behind the show already because it really had it shook things up. And Alicia and Kerry had left the firm, and all that had played out, and then your character was killed, And then the show was able to really delve deep into grief and how that is dealt with, you know, in a really realistic way. And the show then carried that forward until the finale. So the question about that is, given the show really did have such a creative resurgence, that's what a lot of people are saying about it, did that kind of talk and commentary filter through to the set? Were you guys aware that people were really they were really behind the show this season and really thought it was probably the best season so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about all, but I would say the majority of critics have kind of loved the show. Critics that I pay attention to, I should say. So that's always felt really great. I've never really felt like we've gotten a bad rap. You know, I felt like people have appreciated the work we're doing, and I certainly felt, to answer your question, that this year, yes. But I think that starts with the work you're doing. So I think, I mean, that's the only thing that I would say differently is, I think we felt it before necessarily we got the response from people watching it. I think we knew, you know, starting the season, knowing where they left it last year. I think narratively they made some very brilliant choices to end season 4 the way they did and begin season 5 immediately afterwards, while Carrie and Alicia are still plotting leaving, yet still at the firm, so that we, the audience, have spent the whole off season and the beginning of the season of the show knowing things that characters that we're really invested in, such as Diane and Will, don't know. And I think dramatically the tension that created in both Outside the Bubble, when Christine starts to put the pieces together leading into Hitting the Fan. So I would say it started with that. I mean, you know, performing in the show and reading a script like Hitting the Fan, to me, was, you know, it was one of the truly, you know, I've said this before. I mean, John Hickey and I were driving to the set one day while we were shooting that, and both just started talking about the script and said, you know, this is one of the best hours of television I've ever read. I mean, it's that good of a script. I mean, people who want to write our television should read this script. It's really kind of, I don't know, it just blew me away. And for everyone, for the show, for where it took things, certainly for my character and the journey that he goes on in that episode, that's all sort of set, you know, and that arc is set at the end of year 4. And that's, I think, why it makes it so much fun to watch for fans of the show. So that all began, yeah, we could certainly feel it, Rob, to answer you. I'm not trying to not answer your question. I'm just saying I think we felt it before and we're excited about it. So then just so pleasantly, you know, surprised again to just feel like, yes, we felt it, and it's great to see audiences and critics respond to it as well. So.
And now you've got your second Emmy nomination, and that's your episode choice for the Emmy judges as they watch those in the next couple of weeks. So, you've got a fun category again this year. You got guys from Breaking Bad and Downton Abbey and Homeland, and your buddy Peter Dinklage back again. And I was thinking too about all of you guys that are, especially at the age that you are, did you ever in your wildest imagination growing up think, oh, one day I'll be competing against Jon Voight for an acting award?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, that happened to us. I had the privilege of that at the Golden Globes as well, and it's just, you know, Jon Voight, what can you say? He's one of my favorite actors, and didn't get to meet him there. Maybe I'll get to meet him at the festivities, you know, in LA at the end of August. It'd be nice to shake his hand. Such a fan, admire his work over the years. Just a brilliant actor. I think all the actors in the category are pretty, you know, pretty incredible at what they do. So it's humbling to be mentioned with them. It really is. I mean, you know, I love Jim Carter. I love his performance. Peter, obviously, I've known for years and have always admired him, and I'm just so happy for him and the success that he's achieving, and that people are, you know, on such a global level getting to see what a brilliant actor he is. The work that Aaron does on Breaking Bad, just him and all the actors are just remarkable on that show. And who am I leaving out? Mandy Patinkin. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like it's the gift that keeps on giving. These people, you know, he's incredible at it. I've seen him on stage, seen him, you know, in films, television. I love everything about him and everything he does on Homeland. This is great. I mean, and to think I'm mentioned with these guys feels pretty exciting for me. Definitely, especially knowing that this is it for the show for me. So it's it feels pretty cool.
As you're making your way toward
Not
the
gonna.
steps to accept your award, you can shake John Voight's hand.
Yeah. Let's just go with that, okay? Why don't we just go with that? You know, you know what though? So I'd like to know this. Second Emmy nomination, right? Which one is sweeter? The first one a few years ago, or this one?
It's a good question. Obviously, the first time anything like that happens to you, I mean, that was the first time I was ever nominated for an Emmy, so that was the going through the experience of that the first time was something that you just remember, and it felt really special. I think this feels equally, if maybe a little more special, only because I'm really proud of the work this year on the show. I'm proud of what we all accomplished on the show, and how they wrote for Will, and where I was able to go with him, and the places that took me as an actor. This felt particularly special this season. So yeah, but I don't know. It's one's the first, and you guess you remember those things, and this one feels special because I know it's the last for this show.
Well, the neat thing about this one is, I mean, we keep up with all this Emmy history and stuff, and it's not all that often that once they move on from somebody, you didn't get nominated the year after you were first nominated. Once they move on, they typically don't come back to somebody. So to get a nomination a couple of years later, I think is very impressive.
Oh, well, cool. Well, thanks, Chris. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We were sort of chatting before we pressed record about, there's so many other people that I would have been thrilled to see get nominated as well, and that doesn't lessen anybody who has been nominated, myself included. But I feel like there's so many performances that are worthy. How do you factor it into to 5, 6, even 7, whatever it is, people? It's tricky to do that. I mean, the work of Peter Sarsgaard's work, Dean Norris. You could go on and on. I mean, Dean Norris' performance on Breaking Bad is, I think, where that character starts and where that character ends in the show is like my wife and I just watching that show. There's so many great performances. His performance is so brilliant. The subtleties that he brings, where he starts that character, where you think that character may go, and the colors and the sort of depths and the nuance that he brings to that guy year after year, of that sort of tension that he creates, of on one level making you laugh and also that sort of danger. I mean, that's a performance that I could just talk about on and on. So, I would love to see him get nominated too. I mean, to me as an actor, that's what's uncomfortable about these things. It's just like everybody says, it is just an honor to be nominated. It really is, but it's a tricky thing to sort of be pitting actors against one another. The whole competition idea is one that, look, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. I'm going to go and wear my tux, and I'm really honored. But at the same time, it's one that makes me a little uncomfortable because, I don't know. It's a tricky thing. How do you judge this one? Performances are so different, especially if you're focusing on one particular episode. When, I think of work like his and Breaking Bad and Dean's work in that, and you sit there and think about it watching it over those 5 seasons, 6 seasons, 7 seasons. How many seasons was it total, that show? I don't know. 7?
7, yeah.
7?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was 5.5, I think. The fifth one they broke into.
The last one.
6, really, yeah. Yeah, well, someone's got to be nominated, though, hey. And luckily for you, you're back, and you had to make a very difficult choice. You had to pick your episode, and we talked about this briefly before we started, but you had a few really good choices that you could have made. Hitting the fan is what you went with, but the decision tree, I can't even say it, was also a highlight for Will, and that's the episode where he is prepping the cross-examination of Alicia. It's very well written, directed episodes. You had that. You had the episode where you were killed. Was it difficult? Did you have to mull this one over?
You know what? I did. For me, I'll be brutally honest. It came down to 2 episodes that I felt, the strongest about acting-wise. And there's a lot of stuff over these 16 episodes I did this year that I'm excited about and proud about. But I would say Hitting the Fan and The Decision Tree were the two where I felt like got to see the most sort of colors and depth of Will, probably, you know, in the entire series. So I think what helped me make the decision. I just watched the episodes one after the other, and I really love the sequence in The Decision Tree when Will is cross-examining, imagining cross-examining Alicia, and you really start for the first time to sort of see that sort of raw pain that's underneath, sort of the rage and the anger and the aggression. And I love that sequence, and I love that sequence in court. But that's a very small sequence in the episode, and I think I just felt watching them both one after the other, I was just hoping that I would do that and it would become clear to me, and I'm proud of that. But I just was really proud of the work beginning to end of Hitting the Fan, and also that episode as a whole. I just think the journey that we go on, you know, are there enough fireworks in it? I don't know if I don't cry in it. You know, I mean, I get all that, but at the same time, I think the journey of hearing the news and where that leads into, I think maybe there's some more subtlety to it. There's some humor in it. I like the whole journey he goes on, and I'm just so damn proud of that episode of television. I really, like I said, reading it to making it to then seeing audiences react to it was something that I've never experienced like that. So that was one for me where, look, I really don't know how this whole thing works or what people respond to, you know. So I went with the one that I just felt, you know, instinctually felt the most right to me, and that's work that, you know, particularly like we talk about that opening sequence, I'm very proud of, and so that's what I went with.
I want to ask you a couple of career.
Now you guys can go judge it and write on.
No, we watched it. Well, I watched it last night, and I agree. I totally agree. And it really doesn't hurt you that the episode starts on you, and for the first 15 minutes or so, it's all about Will and the desk clearing scene. It has now become a bit of an iconic scene from last season. People will be talking about that for a little while. It doesn't hurt you. So I think you actually made the right decision. So that's good. You get my seal of approval. Yes. Done.
Thanks.
The other nice thing about that
maybe it was Chris.
Oh, go ahead.
Maybe Chris on the fin. Maybe
no,
Chris
I was like, the other nice thing about that one is, and I've noticed this on episodes for people before. We were talking about one before you joined us for somebody else. You get the credit in scenes that you're not in when the other characters are talking about you, and they're talking about you constantly in that episode, even when you're not on screen. So I think that helps as well.
Yeah, I think it's also like, you know, you think about these things like honestly, that I just love that episode. I love all the performances in it. I love the episode itself. I love the writing in the episode. I love how you know, Mr. Whitmore directed it. I love, you know, David Buckley's music. I love Scott, our editor, just edited the hell out of it. I mean, everybody's performance, everybody's got great moments. It moves and it takes you on such a journey. Is it something that that's all I can do. That's the only thing I can say. Well, I like this journey, and I like where the character goes through. And I had so many actor friends of mine reach out to me about the opening moment when he first hears the news. That was so touched by that actors responded to that moment, that sort of nonverbal moment that's not quite, you know, he doesn't really say anything. He just sort of takes in the news. That meant something to me, you know. So win, lose, who cares? That's the one I want with.
Well, you got to follow your heart on those kind of things.
Exactly. When I'm up there, when I'm like this, like applauding for whoever wins, you know, I'll just be like, that's the one I went with.
Hitting the fan.
Yeah, you've got a good shot. We all think you've got a really good shot.
You do.
No.
No pun intended.
There's your dog.
There you go. See, I wanted to ask you a couple of career questions. It's the 25th anniversary of Dead Poets Society, and I saw Ethan Hawke in an interview recently talking about that movie. What was your takeaway from that now that you've had some time to reflect?
Life-changing experience. Kick-started my career. It gave me a, you know, sort of, one of the more memorable experiences making a film I've ever had. You know, met some great people. And it was a life changing, incredible experience to work with Peter Weir and get to work with all those guys. Norman Lloyd, God bless him.
Well, he's
Incredible
still
people.
alive.
Huh?
I said he's still alive.
Norman is still, yes.
Oh, I thought you said God rest his soul. I thought
No, just God bless
you'd
him.
prematurely taken him away.
No, I didn't. No, God bless him, I said.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. it was
Actually, in that
amazing.
article, I don't know if you read it in Entertainment Weekly, but it was an interview with Ethan and the star of Boyhood, the young guy. I can't think of his
Yeah.
name at the moment, but they were basically interviewing each other, and he told, is his name Eller? Is that right? He told him that when he was on Dead Poets, that Norman Lloyd had pulled him aside at one point and said, "This is the learning opportunity of a lifetime to have a director like Peter Weir. You know, take in everything you can." And I'm sure you did the same.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And Leon Pownall played one of the professors. You know, it's met so many cool actors, and Norman would tell stories about Hitchcock. I mean, you know, me, a little like acting film nerd, and I'd sit there and when I worked with Hitch, and he'd just be like glued to every word he said. I don't know, magical time, incredible and amazing to believe that it's been 25 years, and excited to see everybody continuing to do their thing, and that's cool. So, yeah.
That was such a key thing about that cast, if you look back, is so many of them did go on to great careers. And that's not difficult. I mean, that is difficult when you've got a movie centering around a bunch of younger actors who are basically in their teens or maybe early 20s, because must have had just an unbelievable casting director to see not only what they could do for that film, but what maybe promise they had for down the road.
Mm.
I mean, Peter Weir, and Tom Shulman wrote a great script, and Peter Weir made it better. I mean, that's the couple big things I took from that. Was just realizing, like, just seeing what a really great director does to a piece of material, and elevating it and making it better, and working with very little ego. That's as I sort of begin my own sort of directing career, knowing that you take an idea from anybody if it's a good idea and it's going to help tell the story. That you sort of you check your ego at the door, and that you sort of lead the ship, but you're really there to sort of collaborate with all these people. And I found that really inspiring. I mean, even I remember being, we were kids, and felt like he really did listen and really did care about us and doing what we thought. And if we had an idea, we'd do it. I mean, one of the things that I talked about this recently in an interview we did about the anniversary of the movie was the scene where my character is like riding his bike through the field of geese, and that we shot that very early in production, because we shot a lot of my character Knox's stuff in like the first few weeks of filming, because Robin Williams was doing a play in New York in the early part of the film. So I sort of jumped out and started it, even though I was terrified. And I remember that day, it was like a second unit crew, and they were trying to get all these shots, and the birds just wouldn't move, and they had me going down this path by the birds, and the grips and guys hidden with like horn, guns, and like trying to scare them with the sound of this, blowing this air, and nothing worked. And I just recommended to Peter, I said, well, what if, 17-year-old kid, don't know any better. I'm like, what if you just have them drive me up to the top of the hill in the grass, and I just literally ride right down through them? They'll fly away then. And he's like, you think it's safe? And I was like, I mean, I guess it is. I don't know. He's like, all right. So we planned it all out. They drove me up, and we mapped down where I had to go, and I was going to go across this little like water thing here and be careful here. And sure enough, it did it. And those birds, those geese, they took off. And just being in the moment, I remember thinking, God, this is going to be such a cool shot, such a beautiful shot that articulates what this character and all these characters are going through right now as they sort of step into, try to step into their more authentic lives.
I could still remember seeing that movie in the theater. It was just That year, 1989, was, I think, my favorite year ever for movies. I mean, that year was loaded with great movies.
Really? I think the late '70s might have something to say about that, Chris. It might win.
Yeah.
I'm not that old.
Might win.
I'm not that old.
Although there's
Hey, another
some
career
years-
question. I'll let Rob finish up. One of my highlights of the year was Dan Rydell returning on ESPN. What was that time like?
that was a hoot. Yeah, Keith and I have been talking about doing his show since he started the new one, and we couldn't time it out, and it just felt like a perfect opportunity, and he was really gung ho, and I said, let's just do highlights together. It'd be so much fun, and we did, and had a good laugh, and it's nice. It's nice to remind people, especially when you go through. I mean, I don't say this was like the sort of conscious decision, but seeing people's reaction to it, and leading yourself up to the next journey or chapter, and you're not entirely sure where it leads. Just to kind of remind people that watch that you've done this before, and everything sort of has its cycle, and you do jobs, and then you move on to other ones. And I don't know. So in hindsight, I felt like that was kind of nice timing that we did that and had a lot of fun. I certainly was nervous as hell doing live TV. And glad we rehearsed. I mean, Keith, he's like, I will rehearse it, but you'll be fine. I was like shaking because he's so good at doing the highlights, and watching him do it, I mean, this was a real blast. So that was cool.
And speaking of your link to Aaron Sorkin, your guest appearance on Amy Schumer's show, The Food Room, was so good. So funny, man. Look, that's Amy Schumer. She's a genius. But what was that like, first of all? And second of all, did you hear from Aaron afterwards, and did he have anything to say about The Food Room?
No, first of all, I don't talk to Aaron. I mean, I just we don't keep in touch. So
Okay.
I would say, look, I didn't hear from him, but I would like to think that he has a sense of humor about himself. I mean,
Of course.
you'd like to think everyone has a sense of humor about themselves. Yeah, that was a blast to do. I mean, Amy is someone I absolutely worship. I agree with you. I think she's just a genius, and I think Jesse Klein, all the writers on that show, they just do such an amazing job, and I'm glad they were also nominated for an Emmy this year to sort of honor the writing on that show, which is so smart and funny. And so, yeah, it was a blast to do. I did 2 episodes with her this year. We did that one, and we did this other one where we're sort of newscasters together, and she freaks out.
Yeah.
Her ex-boyfriend being interviewed with another girl. And I hope to do more with her. Next season, it was all we did was laugh. Making The Food Room was, I mean, the outtakes of The Food Room when she sent them to me just made me. I watched them like 3 or 4 times in a row because it just reminded me that. That was actually, it just felt like it was unfair how much fun that was. All we did was make each other laugh, and just in a really like naughty way, and I love that, and thought it was fun, So and was really sort of blown away by the response to it. I think people really sort of, it's the credit to the show, and I love that show so much. It's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Josh, you're one of our favorites. We really appreciate it again, and good luck with the Emmys in a few weeks.
Thank you. Is it a few weeks? Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much, much earlier this year. It's at the end of August on a Monday night of all things.
Yeah.
And why is that again? Why is it so early this year? What's the reason? I forget.
Well, it's always the last 8 years. It rotates to a different network every year. NBC, when they get the rotation, once they started doing Sunday Night Football, they couldn't do a September Emmys. And they would have done it on a Sunday night in August, but the MTV Video Awards had already claimed that Sunday night. So you're going to be in town on that weekend with all the MTV people as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Sunday
fun.
and you've got Monday.
That sounds great. All right. Cool, man. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good luck, mate.